Good evening, and welcome to the Ombudsman program. My name is Diane Wellborn, and I am the Ombudsman, and I'm going to be co-hosting the program this evening with our long-term care Ombudsman program director, whose name is Monica Wynn, sitting right here beside me. And we're so glad that you're joining and viewing the program this evening because we have a very important and serious and common problem topic for you all tonight. We're going to talk about Medicare fraud, and we're going to talk about a special and unique program that helps seniors and young adults with their parents deal with questions concerning Medicare. So I'm going to hand it over to Monica to assist with the introductions, and then we'll get right into our questions for the guests, and we invite you to call in with any questions that you might have. Let's introduce our guests.
Oh, that's great. Well, first we have Mary Day, and she is the Ohio Senior Medicare Patrol Director or Associate?
Program Associate.
Associate, yes. And working out of Pro Seniors.
Correct.
And she's going to be sharing a lot of information about Medicare fraud and the Senior Medicare Patrol. And we also have a volunteer, Mary Ann Wallace, who is right here from our area and volunteers in the Senior Medicare Patrol, and we'll be talking with her about her experiences and what she can share about being a volunteer. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
As I was doing a little research about this topic, I just Google searched through the Dayton Daily News Medicare fraud. And what came up was a lot of feature articles about investigations of fraud by physicians and healthcare providers, billing for services for people who were not alive any longer, and also receiving payments for services that never happened. And there was just last year, there was a $38 million settlement between a major nursing home and the U.S. Department of Justice for improper care and billing practices. And so tell me a little bit more. Obviously, this is a big topic. This is, affecting a lot of people. Tell me about a little bit about the scope of Medicare fraud.
Well, they estimate that up to $60 billion, or about 10% of Medicare expenditures, are lost to Medicare fraud, which is just a frightening concern when you think about all of our taxpayer dollars being lost in that way. And I think what's most striking to me is that each one of us can actually do something to stop Medicare fraud and to be empowered and equipped to put an end to this, to actually do something on a daily basis with the lives that we touch, whether it's through our volunteers like Mary Ann or in all of our interactions, to actually stop those frauds from continuing.
Mm-hmm. Now, $60 billion nationwide.
Nationwide.
And any numbers, any idea about Ohio?
It's very difficult to measure specifically because oftentimes the calls that come into the Senior Medicare Patrol, when we hand those off to an investigative body like the Department of Justice or the Office of the Inspector General, those investigations are confidential. And so while their investigation may take years to accomplish, the other part of it is we won't know what's going on during that investigation. Occasionally, the Office of the Attorney General or another investigative agency will come back to us and tell us the result, but it may be years after the initial referral. So it's difficult to know how many of those come back to Ohio specifically.
So we have this huge number of Medicare fraud. What is being done to fight Medicare fraud? What kind of things are in place?
Actually, an increasing number of activities are going on to stop Medicare fraud. At a federal level, there are task forces. There's something called the HEAT task force, which I always have to think about this because it's many different names, and it's a task force at a federal level. There's a lot more collaborative actions going on, both with federal investigations, but also with healthcare companies and with consumers and with the business community. There's a lot more collaboration going on, and a lot of that came out of the Affordable Care Act. So on an increasing basis, we're seeing corrections put in place that help safeguard who can actually become a provider. They've even put limits on and put a moratorium on whether you can actually become a provider of durable medical equipment or a healthcare provider, home healthcare provider, particularly in areas where they've already identified high incidence of fraud. And so they have hot spots that they really crack down on whether or not you can become a provider and what it takes to become a provider.
Are we living in a hot spot?
We live in a durable medical equipment hotspot, Diane.
Okay.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do. Okay. Good for everyone to know. All right. Okay.
A claim to fame we might not like, but
okay.
yes, particularly in the area of Cincinnati, there's actually a competitive bidding for durable medical equipment supplies.
I know it seems obvious, but let's kind of tell people what is that?
What is that?
Yeah,
Durable
that's
medical
one of those-
equipment.
That's one of those things Medicare does. It brings out the parade of acronyms,
yes.
and that helps confusion, I think.
Correct. Durable medical equipment is medical equipment you don't throw away. So that being durable. So a walker, a commode chair, a wheelchair, one of the infamous scooters. Lots of equipment that you can use in your home that helps you to maintain your independence and your safety at home. But you'll also see durable medical equipment used in facility care. Same types of things, wheelchairs, commode chairs, splints, back braces, and there's a lot of scams around those types of equipment, whether it's my doctor ordered this for me or a back brace company called me and said, don't you think you could get your doctor to give you a back brace? It'll be free. And anytime you hear it'll be free, you really want to look deeper.
That's a classic
That's
sign.
a classic
of a scam.
sign.
Yes.
There may be it's too good to be true.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all of those sorts of things. I know there have been a lot of there's been a lot of media coverage about things like the scooters, that everybody can get a scooter, and in fact, that's a lot of those were procured fraudulently, and there's been a lot of prosecution of the vendors that were selling those to people who were being coerced into getting a doctor's note for them, didn't actually need them.
Yeah. I don't want to go too far astray from this, but I did want to just follow up with individuals who are on the receiving end of that reaching out with a scam. You know, we hear the phrase, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, but what else would you advise people to do if somebody is reaching out to them on the phone or through the mail? Or
please report it. Absolutely, please report it. I had several calls this fall about healthcare insurance agents who were calling people and saying, I can come out and review your Medicare plan for you, and you know, you can call the Ohio Department of Health or the Ohio Department of Insurance, the Senior Health Insurance Information Program, and they'll do that for free, and they have nothing to gain by leading you towards one plan or another. Anyone who contacts you about coming out to offer a service like that, they have something to gain. And usually it's their brokerage fees or their commission on getting you to go with a particular plan. That plan may or may not be the best one for you.
Right. Well, thank you for elaborating on that. All right, let's go back to where you were.
Well, it kind of leads to, you were saying that they may come out to see you, and they may want to get a commission, but they may also want to get your information.
Yes.
And so that's another type of fraud that is part of this $60 billion business.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like?
Yes. I think sometimes we forget that our Medicare card is like gold. So it's like handing out your bank account information, handing out your credit card information, just handing them cash. So when someone comes and offers you a product and says, but I need to get your Medicare number for that, or can you tell me, let's set it up so it's coming out directly from your account, and they're asking for your bank information, you know, please report that. If you call me and I'm not the right place to report it, I'm going to help walk you through that process so that it gets to the right person, whether that's the Ohio Attorney General or the Federal Trade Commission, or starting with your own bank. You know, I want to walk you through that process. So if it seems fishy, it's probably fishy. And you know what? There's no harm in calling me if it wasn't.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that medical identity theft, as it's called, has
Very
a lot
scary.
of consequences.
It does.
I was just kind of thinking about that, false claims on your Medicare health. A physician says that you need this service, and they never provide it, and so that shows up on your claim.
It does.
Tell us about
Well,
that.
and we really encourage people to take with them their personal health care journal, which if you call me, I will send you one. Keep track of what's going on when you go to your doctor's appointment. Did they prescribe something for you? Did they order a test? Which doctor did you see? Did you receive any other services? Did you get some vaccinations while you were in the office? Because then you can go back and compare this later to your Medicare summary notice. And if you're seeing inconsistencies, the first thing we advise people to do is call your provider, call and find out. But you're right, Monica, what if someone takes your medical identity, takes your Medicare card, or for that matter, your private insurance, and claims to be you? Now they get a hip replacement. Maybe you need a hip replacement later. If you're not paying attention and you're not looking to see what's being billed to your Medicare summary notice, you may have no idea that someone else has made a claim on your Medicare. And they're not going to replace your hip 3 times. So it's really important to pay attention.
Right, wheelchairs or
Wheelchairs, durable medical equipment. What if you really do need a back brace at some point in the future? And you know nothing about this one that was ordered in your name.
Right. I was thinking because it's also attached to your social
Your
security
Social Security number.
So there you have another route of access to.
Right. Now I have your Social Security number, and I know your date of birth, and now I can open credit cards in your name and set up the change of address, and now I can get credit cards sent to a different address, and I can start using your credit to spend money, and also I can sell that on to other scammers and to other criminals, sadly.
Oh.
It's exciting, isn't it? Yeehaw.
Well, and it is. You don't get another Medicare number.
You don't get
another Social Security number. So this follows you for the rest of your life. So that's again one of the important parts of, why we need to pay attention.
If I could just jump in and say that that when a person receives a statement, and it may not always be easily understandable, and I think that may be where you come into the picture. But when somebody gets a statement and something, they don't know whether it's right or wrong because they're not sure about the codes or they're not sure about the procedures. Right. So if somebody has a suspicion, of course you're going to want them to call, right? Well,
the first thing we want them to do is call the provider, because that's private and that's your confidential information, and we don't want to encroach on that if it's not necessary. But if you see a test on your Medicare summary notice and you go back to your notes and you think, well, I don't remember them ordering that test, or I don't remember them drawing blood that day, and here's a test that says that there were labs done that day. If I call my physician and say, can you just look in my record, the physician's office typically will walk through what's the basis for that code and what procedure actually happened, and oftentimes mistakes are found that way. Not everything that's wrong is fraud. Was there an intent to mislead someone? Was there an intentional misuse of information to fraudulently bill? Or was there a billing error? And we really want to resolve all of those things, but you can do a lot by keeping track and by being that person who calls your provider if you're not sure of something.
Well, we were talking a little bit, I looked on your website and they talked about other schemes that are out there to get information. Is there, there had to do with ambulances and other consumer scams. What discount cards and plans?
There have been a lot of scams around Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, telling Medicare beneficiaries, you need to go get your Obamacare card or you're going to be fined if you don't get your Obamacare card. There's no such thing. You have a Medicare card, it's the only Medicare card you need, but it's really incited a lot of fear, and so it puts people on edge and they're apprehensive. So someone might call and say, well, what I need is your Medicare number so that I can send you your Obamacare card, because if you don't complete this registration now, you might be fined, or you could be penalized, or you could be taken off Medicare. None of those things are true, but we all respond to fear, and we're trying to do the right thing, and so it's easy for any of us to succumb to those ploys from criminals to try to get our confidential information. If someone's asking for your Social Security number, they're asking for your Medicare number, which of course is the same. they're asking for your date of birth, they're asking for your bank account information, just hang up. They say it's shrewd to be rude. It's perfectly okay. You don't have to be friendly to people who are trying to, in their career, trying to scam you out of your health care benefits and your money.
Well, and Diane touched on it, some of the things, what can you do to, prevent yourself from being a victim of this type of fraud?
Be skeptical. Right.
And ask questions.
Ask questions. Why do you need that information? Well, here, let me take your name and I'll call you back. Or if you'd like to mail me something, I believe you have my mailing address already. Sadly, there are a lot of scams that offer prizes, and you're the lucky winner is a very big one. Another, what they do then is they will encourage people to then send money. You just need to pay the fees on this, and then I'll send you your winnings. Or there is a small tax on that, or we need to pay postage or shipping, and people fall for that and have given away thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars that way. And now they have your confidential banking information.
If you're ever asked to pay for something,
it's not free.
It's not free.
Right,
That's
right.
a red flag, a
Absolutely.
very definite red flag.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, I also wanted our viewers to know that we want to give you the phone number to reach Mary, and we'll give you our phone number as well in case we're inundating you. So why don't you give your phone number now?
Sure. We have a toll-free number. It's good throughout Ohio. It's 800-488-6070. And I'm the only Mary there, so you can ask for Mary. And we also have a range of different services, so you might call for one of those services as well as Senior Medicare Patrol.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you very much. And if you didn't get that 800 number down, you can always call us at 223-4613, and we'll connect you to Mary. So,
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to step back just a second. You said other services through your program. That would be Pro Seniors.
Pro Seniors, yeah.
What are the other services that?
Right. Pro Seniors has been around since 1975, and we have a legal hotline that's available to anyone who is 60 or over who lives in the state of Ohio, or someone calling on their behalf. So, Monica, maybe you're not 60, but maybe you know someone who is, and you're trying to help them. So it's perfectly fine for you to call on behalf of a loved one and kind of get a grasp of what the issues might be. It doesn't have to be a legal issue that you might think of as a senior legal issue. It could be, well, in that windstorm, the tree fell in my neighbor's yard and it damaged my neighbor's fence. What are my responsibilities? What are my legal rights? It can be anything. It might be maybe you have some credit card debt. Maybe you have, you're threatened with eviction. You know, it can be any sort of legal issue, and they can call Pro Seniors for that issue. They'll get a telephone appointment. Our receptionist will set that up, and a hotline attorney will call back for a 30-minute consultation. And so we try to get as much of that intake information in advance so that they can spend most of that time on the phone with an attorney.
That is super.
It's a really wonderful service, and unfortunately so many people don't know about it. Even though we've been around, this is our 40th anniversary this year, and still there are people who have never heard of us. So please help spread the word.
Is that the same 800 number?
It is the same 800 number.
All right, all right. So
I think we have a caller that has a question for our program. So thank you very much for calling in the program this evening. We'd love to hear your question. You're on the air.
Yes, thank you for this important program. I have to admit, I'm just astonished at the scope of the problem. I had only an inkling that there was so much fraud and that people were so vulnerable. And I guess my question is a very general one. First of all, education. Given the age and the vulnerability of the population that are the victims of this kind of fraud, what are the major educational outreaches to help people? And my other question is punishment. You've been talking about actual crimes, not just bad business practices, but crimes, fraud. And what are the penalties for this kind of fraud, and who enforces it?
Okay. Thank you very much for those great questions. We will get them answered for you. We appreciate your call. Thank you. Let's start with educational outreach. Who's doing that?
Senior Medicare Patrol it's a project of the Administration on Community Living, formerly the Administration on Aging. So there are actually 54 projects in the United States, including Ohio Senior Medicare Patrol, or Ohio SMP, and we rely heavily on our volunteers like Marianne to be out at community events that may attract seniors and their families. And so our volunteers do a lot of this. It's very much a grassroots educational effort. We have about 55 volunteers in Ohio, and we're very eager to have more volunteers. Really getting this information into the hands of more seniors is one of the most crucial things we can do. We also hold major community education events. We have one coming up in Cincinnati, March the 25th. It's a Consumer Protection Forum, where we have guests from the Office of the Ohio Attorney General, the Office of the Inspector General, Social Security, and we actually have a private and elder law attorney, all of whom work on these sorts of issues. Moving on to the penalty piece, there are certainly penalties, criminal penalties, and these frauds and crimes are actually investigated by a variety of different bodies, including the Department of Justice, the Office of the Inspector General, the Postal Inspector. It all depends on how the crime occurred and who was involved, and I think some of this coordination that goes on around this issue has been tremendous in cracking down on the fraud, in really looking at it from the perspective of, was the person first contacted on the internet? Is it a healthcare marketing insurance issue? So the Department of Insurance may get involved if there is a broker involved and who needs to be sanctioned for misuse of their license, if it's a marketing practice. If it's theft of Medicare dollars or billing for services that weren't provided, then Department of Health and Human Services might get involved, and they might partner with the Department of Justice. So it's really getting a serious look, but I really thank the caller for his questions, because that's exactly what we're about. We really need more boots on the ground. We need more people out in the public talking to within their community, giving presentations. Our volunteers and our staff go out and give presentations on these very issues and give people the tools to fight this very big problem.
Okay. And with respect to that education, how long has Senior Medicare Patrol been around?
Well, in Cincinnati, and we started off as one of 3 demonstration projects in the state of Ohio in 2003, and so we've been going since that time, and we are now a statewide project. And there is, as I said, there are 54 projects across the nation now. And so if you're watching this program but you're home, you need to go home to another state, we can find you your SMP in your state as well.
Okay, that's great. And how long have you been a volunteer with the program?
Well, I have been volunteering since approximately 2008.
Great, good for you. How'd you get started?
Well, actually, my husband found a little ad on TV, and when I came home from work, he said, Marianne, he said, this is right up along the lines that you are working with, and I think, you ought to call these folks because they need some help. So I called them, and they had a training program, I think it was in Lima at the time, when I really didn't have to go to Lima because they had ones closer here. But I went up and gave me an opportunity to spend the night and, have a little change of scenery. So I went up there and took the training and then continued with it down here, and then started participating in some of the, when they had the Medicare enrollment, and then they have the Medicare checkup. So those are usually twice a year. One's in the spring and one's in the fall. And that's where I get a lot of the questions for people who could speak with me privately about it and feel confident that it's going to stay with me and that I will direct them to the proper people, And it's been very rewarding, because I do know, and every time they have called this SMP, they have already always responded, and it's always been very positive. So you just put them in the right direction, and that is the problem, is that people do not know where to go. And the younger ones, like their children, they need to get involved with this stuff to take and help their parents, help their neighbors, and just family members. And and look into this stuff and help them with billing and stuff like that, dates of service, when it's paid, and if there's any questions, just call the provider, whoever that might be, and question it, because you have to have firm documentation. They have to take and supply that. That's the rules.
Okay. Well, that's great history that you have with the Where is it that you find that you are meeting people? At the senior citizen centers in the checkup times?
Well, the libraries are a good place. To find people who have questions, you would find them everywhere, actually. Because people talk, and they'll say, I had this problem and I don't know what to do about it. Well, what is your problem? So then, they'll say it was this and this and that. So then it just kind of rolls out of their mouth, and so I usually give them something and a phone number and let them call.
Okay. And in order to reach you, if somebody here in Montgomery County wants to reach you, they would reach you through the Mary's number that we've just provided, and they would say, I live here in Montgomery County, I have a Medicare question, and tell us how that connection would be made.
Right. Mostly what would happen is Mary Ann makes referrals to pro-seniors to our office, and if they are requesting a presentation, then Jane Winkler, our volunteer coordinator, would get in touch with Mary Ann about, Mary Ann, can you go out to this health fair on such and such a date? Can you be there to respond to questions and hand out information and reach out to seniors and, one, see if others would like to volunteer in this way as well, but also here's some information and what sort of questions do you have? And Mary Ann mentioned the Medicare checkup events and the Welcome to Medicare, and those are through the Ohio Senior Health Insurance Information Program, and we partner very closely with OSHIP to do those presentations, and Mary Ann's a big part of that.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, what alerts you when somebody is asking you questions to make you suspect that something they have in front of them is fraud or error?
Well, usually it'll come, they'll mention about they got this bill and they don't understand it. And, they have to look at these bills and really pay attention. And they need some help from somebody to really look at them and see. It's just amazing how some people will just say, I just don't really understand what to do. Well, let me take and help you. Let me look at this. And then if I see that it's a possible problem, then you call or have a family member take and call and check on this.
Right. Very good. That's great. About how many people are you talking to a year about these matters?
Well, between the Medicare checkups and enrollment and then some of the private organizations that I do, it's actually in the number of hundreds, actually.
Yes.
It's
You're
a lot.
busy lady then, very busy.
Well, I could be as busy, I could probably be busy every day of the week,
Busy,
actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there a common theme other than people not understanding their bills that they're bringing to you, or is that the most common?
They're always interested in fraud. When it comes, everybody's interested in money. And when it's fraud, that's being taken out of all of our pockets.
Yes.
And, I don't think people really think about that. If somebody had their hand in your pocket, it's no different.
Good point you're making. Thank you very much. Do you ever get calls in your program, or calls that you encounter from individuals that are working within a system, within an office of any kind, that suspect that something's going wrong? A lot of times these people get the label of a whistleblower because they're on the inside and they see something suspicious. Do either of you have an experience with that?
I have had a couple of calls like that, and we tend to refer those on to the appropriate investigative body, because usually it takes quite a lot of courage for someone to come forward, and it's so important to protect their privacy and to allow an appropriate criminal investigation to occur, and I certainly don't want to impede that investigation in any way. So yes, if someone would call me about that, I would equip them to call the appropriate investigative body to report that and have that investigated.
Okay.
I think that people need to realize that if they suspect something, they need to take and call the appropriate authorities. Could be here, could be the Attorney General's office, because you might think, well, my call, what difference is it going to make? Well, your call could make a big difference, because how many others have called to take, and they're tracking all this stuff with the computers today. You know, they will track this, and if they see a pattern, they're going to say, maybe we better take a look at this.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, because one person who is doubting whether or not they should call, they could be the trigger for something that's a whole lot bigger.
That's
if
exactly
they just
right.
report.
And I had that happen with an incident, and and they were able to recover the state, and of course it's federal funds too, thousands and thousands of dollars. So, you know, and so I really feel good about that. That's a good footprint.
Right, good for you. And sometimes it just starts with that one individual,
That's right.
doesn't it? Yes.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Did you want to jump in here?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
please.
All right. So you were motivated to become a volunteer because your husband suggested it to you. What kind of keeps you going with this, in addition to the things you've already said?
Well, it gives me a purpose in life, since my husband passed away here back in 2010. And since I have worked with so much of this in the past with my business, you know, I have just been exposed to a lot of it, you know, and in-home care, you know, the health aides that come in, if you suspect something there, that's why they have to get a copy of their paperwork and take and be sure that the hours are down, or what they call them units, that you have the signatures on there, and that this stuff matches up, because I think that they send the explanation of benefits, EOBs, out to everybody, and so that it all matches up. So the EOBs, which is explanation of benefits, should match your paperwork. You know, and I know when you're sick you don't feel like doing that. That's the last thing that you feel like doing. But that's where you need some help. You need somebody that you can call and you can trust that's going to help you with this stuff.
All right. And that would be Pro Seniors then in our area to get in
You are
in touch
exactly
with
right.
you. Now, how for anyone watching tonight who might be interested in possibly volunteering with the program, tell us a little bit about the kind of training that you got and the amount of time that you spend and the variety of people that you get to meet through doing this.
Well, you get to meet a lot of people, a lot of different situations, and the training, like I say, I went to Lima, and Ann and Jane were there, and they went through a training with us, which is a lot of the stuff that we talked about here. You know, what you do, what you look for, and the prosecutions and the money that's been, you know, the fraud and how much has been recovered, and, you know, just procedures to go with, you know, to get the job done.
Okay. And do you have a network of your volunteers? Do you get together for refreshers or coffee or?
Well, we get together occasionally, not too often, but Jane keeps us well informed over the internet about up-to-date fraud things and what's going on. And so the next time that I will see a lot of them is probably going to be at the fraud forum down in Cincinnati, which I plan on going to.
Okay.
March 25th, I believe.
So then you get lots of additional Medicare information that comes to you to help continue your education with all of this work that you're doing. Yeah.
And people are fascinated with this fraud. They really are. But they need to help with it too.
Right, right. How many folks would you estimate, either over the course of your volunteering or a year, I don't know how you keep count, but about how many people have you worked with in this way?
Like in the...
Just the numbers, a general number.
You mean giving the presentations?
Uh-huh.
Well, like I said, you know, I come in contact with hundreds of them. Some of it's privately, and some of it's when I do a presentation, you know, or help like the libraries. We'll be going into the introduction into Medicare, and we'll at the Better Business Bureau will be there, Department of Insurance, the Attorney General's office, and well, let's see some of the other ones there. But you know, they'll have a whole forum set up, and everybody gets a chance to take and talk about what their expertise is in, and then they can ask questions after that.
Okay.
So.
All right. And do you all receive a lot of questions from people who are new to Medicare, who are just encountering the Medicare system and the signing up? Is that a group that you hear from a lot as well?
We do. We tend to, for them to have a really comprehensive response to those sorts of questions, we do refer a lot to the Ohio Senior Health Insurance Information Program, because they have counselors who are equipped specifically to walk people through that new process. So we can respond to those questions, but we really see OSHIP as the experts in that area. If someone has a Medicare issue, that might, in terms of coverage and maybe needing an appeal, that's something we would probably refer to our legal hotline, and an attorney may be able to respond to those issues specifically. We also, in the Southwest Ohio, we have a Medicare specialist attorney, and we would help connect individual callers with the Medicare specialist in their area of the state too.
Well, that's great. And for individuals that, again, might be considering, they may be watching the program and thinking about volunteering, tell us a little bit about what you as the program associate ask of them.
Well, we ask them how they want to have an impact. So some people really enjoy going out and giving presentations, and others really prefer to staff like a health fair, actually to be there to respond one-to-one with individuals. Others really like being up in front of a crowd, and we provide the training, and we also provide all the information and the materials to equip people to go out and give those presentations. So we're going to talk to people about their interests and how do they want to make a difference, and how do they think they would like to get involved. We also have some volunteers in our office who help in more of a behind-the-scenes support function as well.
Sure. And are you able to visit people in their homes to talk about their questions?
We don't tend to do that in that way. We answer those calls really more by phone, and we would offer more of a community opportunity to do that.
Okay. And it's okay with you all then to be talking to an adult child? I mean, you don't have to have releases if somebody, how does that work? If somebody else is calling about their loved one's Medicare, sometimes agencies get bogged down in making sure who they're talking to.
Well, with our legal hotline, I think they're very skilled at this. They will actually get the senior on the phone too and ask for permission to talk to the person who's calling on their behalf, and make sure that it's really with their consent. And whoever they're speaking with, it's always going to be advice that's given in a way that's in the best interest of that senior. So,
okay. Back to the kind of the fraud issue a little bit. What is the volume of referrals that you all are making on to the various entities that you send them to? You've mentioned inspector generals, and you've mentioned attorney general's office, and there's all kinds of entities that are ready and standing ready to receive your referrals. What's the volume that you all are sending to them?
That is such a good question. I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Well, I say that because I only joined the program in August.
Okay.
I previously managed the long-term care ombudsman program in our part of Ohio.
Right.
And so I don't know on an annual basis how many we're referring out. Mary Ann mentioned Ann Fredrickson, and Jane. Ann Fredrickson is our project director. And so she handled the majority of these calls prior to me joining the program. And she could tell you the answer to that, but I can't.
You will be able to tell us next time you come back to talk to us. I'm just curious because with, Ohio has a large over 60 population, one of the larger ones within the United States. So I just wondered if we were generating, maybe more than some others. But can you give us some of the, without names of course, some of the more interesting situations that you've run into?
Well, I worked recently with a gentleman whose name, his first initial and his last name were the same as another gentleman, and they had the same date of birth.
Oh, that's
and they'd used
unusual.
A healthcare provider in common, and this poor gentleman, he had years of charges against his Medicare number that were not his. And thankfully, through many, many phone calls, I was able to get the billing company and that billed for a variety of different practices, a variety of different providers, to recognize that somewhere along the line someone had put in the wrong Medicare number for this gentleman, and they reversed out 4 years of charges against this gentleman's Medicare number.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So, and he had tried so hard to get this resolved. Unfortunately, sometimes people will not listen to a Medicare beneficiary, and so if nothing else, I can add strength to the voice of that caller and say, listen, listen to this gentleman. He's talking sense. He knows what he's talking about.
There's a problem here.
There's a
real
here,
problem that
and
needs
you
to be
can help
looked
fix it.
Right.
So they were actually very cooperative once I got involved, and we recovered about $2,500 in charges that should have been billed off either to Medicaid or to private insurance or to a different gentleman's Medicare number, not to this individual.
And in that case, you kind of conclude that that's really an error, right?
It's-
Because
it
there's
is.
so
It's an
many
error.
commonalities there
Yes.
for that poor
There
gentleman.
was no intention to
But the
defraud anyone.
frustration, the frustration
was
of having to
huge.
go through that.
And
to
here's
get
a
that
person
fixed,
who's not
yeah.
well. You know, he's not
Yes.
feeling well.
Yeah.
He's going through different medical procedures, and on top of that, he's trying to sort out this mix-up in Medicare numbers.
Right, right. Very, very difficult. Do you have a particular situation that you would like to relate about a particular person?
I do.
Okay.
There was a lady that came into one of the senior centers, and she came up to me and privately. Some of them like to speak privately.
Yes, of course.
And because these are really very private issues. But anyways, and she says, you know, Mary Ann, she says, I really need some help here. She said she was like 62, and her husband died, and everything was being billed under her deceased husband's Social Security number. And so anyways, they were there from the state doing one of their presentations, and that's how I happened to be there. And so I said, well, I really don't know the answer to this question, how you can get this straightened around, because it was beginning to be an issue. So I went to one of the gals there, and I said, you know, I asked her the question, and she said, you know what, I really don't know. So anyways, finally, I said, well, let's call the Social Security, Teresa Busher there, who is excellent. And so I said, she will help you, and she will get the answer for you. Well, before you know it, within like, not even more than 2 weeks, it was straightened out. So they were able to take and resolve that for that lady, because I could tell she was very frustrated and upset, because, you know, the paperwork just begins to multiply, and you think, I've got to straighten this out. Do I want to? No. You know, so anyways, but that was very helpful to her, and I was glad I could really help her with that.
That's a wonderful example. Thank you for sharing that. People do get overwhelmed.
Oh, it is.
with
It's so overwhelming. Yeah.
What would you advise from what you've seen over the years and the many, many people you've helped about any clues about organizing the kind of paperwork that comes in? We have the booklet here that Mary from Pro Seniors would be glad to send people, but do you see a theme there that might be of use to people? Do you put them in date order? Do you put, what do you suggest?
Well, I can speak from my own personal experience with my husband, as I just had to get a book, you know, the binder type book, and I had to start a page for everything, you know, for this doctor, for this service, whatever, and you just have to get it organized, and date of service, and keep them month by month, you know, and then as you pay them, then you mark that you paid it, and the check number, and the date that you paid it. So, and then that way you have it down. It's a service, this date of service. And so it was very simple for me, but you need to start it in the beginning, especially if it's going to be a drawn out issue, you know, and you have to have a folder for this stuff.
Yeah, keep it all
You just
together,
have
keep
to
it
do
in
it.
order. Yeah,
You
go
had,
ahead.
you had mentioned sometimes people will get the bill from the and pay it automatically when it hasn't yet gone to their insurance. So is that a common problem that you're seeing that causes seniors to get frustrated or confused? And
Well, I think that happens a lot. That, you know, you'll get the bill from whoever the provider was or the service. You'll get that bill, and the insurance company hasn't even paid out. It might say it's pending, you know. You can't just go ahead and take and pay that. Sometimes it takes a matter of weeks, maybe even months. So you can always call your insurance company and ask them, say, you know, I have a question about this. Is it paid? You know, what's the status of this account?
Oh, that's great. We have a caller that has a question for us, so I think I'm going to turn to that now, if that's okay. Hello, thank you for calling the program. We'd like to hear your question.
Yes, I have a final question for the ombudsman themselves. given that long-term care ombudsmen are out there in the nursing homes and the other facilities and are on the front line, so to speak, in relation to this problem, I'm just curious, what percentage of the cases that are opened on a regular basis by long-term care ombudsmen are connected to Medicare fraud? And yeah.
Thank you. We'll get your answer to the question. Maybe we should kind of clarify a little bit about who's working in nursing homes and who's working in the community. So I'll let you take that one.
That's fine. As a long-term care ombudsman, we are working in a nursing home setting and also in other long-term care settings. So to the caller's question, how many of the cases we open include something that involves a question about billing practices for Medicare or Medicaid or any other insurance. We do get a number of confusing billing practices. One situation was that a person's Medicare supplement, their secondary Medicare program, was not being billed. And so they are receiving this large sum of a bill, but they're already home from the nursing home. So we are investigating and working with them to contact the nursing home and have them submit the bill to the Medicare supplement and such. So those are kind of sometimes errors, but the fraud, it is kind of hard to detect.
I have a good one for you.
Please do, Mary.
Okay. So one of the ombudsmen in the Cincinnati Regional Ombudsman Program noticed during a visit that, or had spoken with a family member who had noticed during a visit that a lot of the residents in the nursing home had the same shoes, orthopedic shoes, and reported this to the Senior Medicare Patrol, who, when they investigated it further, it turned out that the podiatrist that saw residents in this nursing home had written orders for all the residents to get orthopedic shoes. And the reason the family member who visited noticed this was because her mother didn't need orthopedic shoes, and she couldn't understand why they all had the same shoes. So that, in fact, was Medicare fraud, and it was investigated, and Medicare did pursue that with that podiatrist. So sometimes it's nice and obvious like that, but not that often. So.
And in that case, the observation then by the ombudsman went to the Senior Medicare Patrol,
yes,
for investigation and hand over to the Attorney General or whoever in that case really had that kind of authority. So
yeah, and the other fraud we really haven't talked about is fraud by beneficiaries. I mean, sadly, sometimes people receiving Medicare actually are talked into or agree to be part of a scheme to defraud Medicare, whether that's agreeing to get their physician or to tell the physician they do need a back brace, or agreeing to take some sort of payoff from the home health aide who is there to provide a skilled service, and they're really only staying a quarter of an hour, but the beneficiary is willing to sign off on them having been there longer. There's a number of ways that beneficiaries can be coerced or encouraged to be part of a fraudulent scheme, and those are also crimes, and they're also punishable. So not a good thing to do.
No, not to be encouraged to be involved in such kinds of behaviors. But overall, I mean, for the Ombudsman program, is there an estimate? It's a rather small number of cases that are triggering fraud, I would say, overall in the state. I think most of it is triggered out in the community.
Yeah,
I think so, and I think the regulatory agencies that oversee the nursing homes, the Ohio Department of Health, actually make direct referrals to the Medicare and Medicaid Fraud Control Unit at the Attorney General's office if they suspect those fraudulent activities. And so they're going to have access to more of a behind-the-scenes view of billing issues than the Ombudsman would typically have.
Right. Well, I think one thing that your comments tonight have really pointed out is that there is a lot of activity to look at and try to deal with Medicare fraud. I mean, we, from our volunteer level, our very experienced volunteer here with us tonight, all the way up to almost every state agency that we mention that touches this has some kind of fraud unit. So it looks like we have a lot of, you know, a lot of looking glasses on fraud right at this point. But it seems really important that people get their questions and their problems dealt with. And I think on the neighborhood level and in the community level, I think that the kind of education that you all are doing, I hope that our viewers can tap into. And we would like to be able to post your your visits to libraries on our website and help to get that information out to the public. And I hope this evening too that some people viewing will come looking for you by calling Mary's office, and we'll give the number again before we go off, and getting to meet you in person with their Medicare questions and their folders with all of their materials there. So your next event is in Cincinnati. Do you have a next event planned yet in the Montgomery County or Green? Do you have something nearby here?
There's actually, I know we're doing something with the Marketplace Task Force with the Better Business Bureau. So if you keep track of their events, I believe we have an event coming up in March, early March, and I think there's another one later in May. Okay. And so we're working cooperatively with the Better Business Bureau and other entities as part of that task force. There are also other wonderful organizations that look at these same types of issues but from a slightly different angle, and many of them I know are in contact with your office as well, like collaboratives around financial exploitation of seniors and so forth.
We do have a little bit of time left, not a whole lot, but we do have a caller that's coming in. All right, we'd like to hear your question in the few minutes we have left. Please, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay. When you take a prescription drug, when you don't take the prescription drug, the medicine in the time limit that Medicare gives you, why is the late fee forever? Once you do have the prescription drug, then this late fee should be dropped. It's not fair of Medicare to charge it to you forever. It's not fair to seniors, and I'm very upset with Medicare, and I don't think it's fair. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and I hope that you are staying on so that we can provide a telephone number for you, because we would not be able to resolve this for you here on the air, but certainly we want to help you. So I'm going to let Mary give her number again so that you can write this down and give her a call tomorrow in the office or Wednesday at your convenience to discuss this further.
Right. Our toll-free number is 800-488-6070. And what I would advise callers on issues like this, and I will be happy to respond to this in person or by phone, is the Medicare Rights Center really looks at issues like this where it would require a change in the system. It would require a change probably in law or policy to change this penalty for people who have enrolled after the prescribed period in a Medicare plan. And so that's something that I would talk about with a caller about how to make those contacts, including talking to our legislators about the hardship caused by such a penalty and the rationale for those policies.
Right. Okay. Thank you for calling in, and we encourage you to make the contact tomorrow to have that direct conversation. Thank you very much. I'm sorry we have very little time left, but I would like to give you just a minute to wrap up with anything that you all would like to close with.
Well, I really thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think this opportunity to reach out to the public and really let everybody know that each person can make a difference, that keeping track of your Medicare summary notices, keeping track of your claims when they come in, reaching out to events like the ones that Marianne attends, and really consider being a volunteer with Ohio Senior Medicare Patrol. It's a wonderful, rewarding activity, and we so appreciate our volunteers.
It's wonderful. Good to hear.
Yes, thank you for having us here. And if you would keep contact with your libraries, your senior centers, there's usually somebody there that can get you information. I know that at the senior centers they usually have SMP, Senior Medicare Patrol information there, and there's a phone number there. And if anybody wants to talk to me, they could call down at Cincinnati at the 800 number, and I would be glad to meet with them and help them set up something that's going to work for them.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Mary Ann, for being on the program, and thank you, Mary, thank you, Monica. Thanks to the viewers, and if you need to follow up, we're at 223-4613. Thank you very much. Good night.